In this week's podcast, you'll learn 10 commonly used idioms connected to food so that you can expand your vocabulary and improve your English. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés con Bea y Craig.
I'm Bea.
And my name's Craig.
With many years of teaching experience between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level.
And if you're a new listener, welcome to the podcast. And if you've come back again, thank you very, very much. Wow, Bea, that week went by really quickly, didn't it? It went by in a flash, almost as though it was 5 minutes.
Well, it certainly feels like it. So yes, it did go by in a flash.
Actually, let's tell everyone how the sausage is made. Because, did you see what I did there? Idioms on food. If I tell you how the sausage is made, I tell you how we make these podcasts. Now, regular listeners know that we don't record the podcasts every week. So Bea has kindly come over to our place of recording here in my flat in Valencia. And we're recording a bunch of podcasts together so that you can have a podcast every single Sunday. So that's how the sausage is made.
Sounds good.
Now, this week we're talking about idioms again. If you missed last week's episode, go back and listen. Episode 422 about work idioms and expressions. This week it's food. But before we go into our idioms on food, what's an idiom?
Well, it's a very good question. It's a group of words that have a meaning that's different from the meaning of the individual words. For example, over the moon doesn't really mean you're over the moon. It means you're very, very excited. You're delighted. See the light doesn't literally mean that you see the light. It means that you actually understand a situation which perhaps has been given you a headache because until that moment you didn't understand it. And once you do understand it, you can say, I can see the light.
And I have to say I'm over the moon to be podcasting again with Bea. Sadly, Reza still has COVID, but hopefully he'll be back with us very, very soon. Now, our first idiom this week connected to food has the word food in it. It's food for thought. Now, if something is food for thought, it means that it needs serious consideration. So, for example, I could say, Bea, your ideas that you've kindly given me for losing weight have certainly given me food for thought.
Yeah, Craig, they may have given you food for thought, but are you actually going to implement my ideas?
Well, I always promise you, don't I? But I never deliver. I think it's a case of having too much food and not enough thought. I think that's what...
I'll carry on. I'll never give up.
And part of my problem is cake, because I love cake. But what does the idiom, it's a piece of cake, mean?
Well, a piece of cake, when you say, oh, it's a piece of cake, it means it's very easy. So perhaps you've done an exam in class, or I'm sure most listeners will have done at least one exam at some point in their lives. And sometimes you come out of the exam room thinking, oh, God, I've failed. What a terrible exam I've just done. Other times you might come out of the exam room and think, the English exam was a piece of cake. I finished it with 20 minutes to spare. And that means that the exam was very easy. So it's not really connected to eating cakes or pieces of cake, Craig. Sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah, I know. And if you are a Spanish speaker, I know we do have many Spanish speakers listening to this podcast, you have a similar idiom, which is pan comido, I believe. It's pan comido. It's a piece of cake. It's easy. Now, if somebody tells you that the B2 first exam, the Cambridge exam, is a piece of cake, or the C1 advanced exam is a piece of cake, maybe you should take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, definitely, because a pinch of salt, if you take something with a pinch of salt, it means that something may be untrue or incorrect. So all of you out there who have been told that the C1 exam is a piece of cake, take it with a pinch of salt or even a grain of salt.
Yeah, they're interchangeable, aren't they? It doesn't really matter if you say pinch or grain. If you pinch something, you put your two fingers together, your finger and your thumb together to pinch something. And that's sometimes how you can take a little bit of salt, a few grains of salt. So another example with this expression could be, I would take the opinion poll with a pinch of salt because they only asked a small number of people. And that sometimes happens. People generalize, they give you a political viewpoint and they say this is what people think, but maybe they've only asked a couple of hundred people. So the results aren't necessarily realistic. You should take them with a pinch of salt. Be very critical and very careful how you accept that information.
Yeah, it's like all these anti-aging creams that we're being sold constantly. And if you apply them to your skin, to your face, religiously, in 2 months, you may be a 50-year-old woman, but in 2 months, you're going to look like a 30-year-old. So I certainly think you need to take that with a pinch of salt. It may be untrue.
I would take many advertising messages with a pinch of salt these days.
Absolutely.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yummy.
That's accepting the situation for what it is. We all like cookies. Most of us like cookies, which I'm sure you know is the American word for biscuit. And when cookies crumble, they go into very small pieces. If you take a packet of cookies and you drop them on the floor, probably you'll have crumbs. So the cookies have crumbled. And this idiom means you accept the situation for what it is, even though something negative has happened. Can you think of an example, Bear?
Yeah, this has happened to me in my life, and it might well have happened to some of our listeners. You go for an interview, you think you've done okay in the interview, you think, oh, it's a piece of cake, and then you get a reply saying that you haven't got the job. So you probably feel disappointed that you didn't get the job, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. So I have to accept the situation for what it really is.
Yeah, I think you can also say that's the way it goes is a very similar expression. And I know recently, Bear, you've become self-employed, as I am, and being self-employed in Spain involves a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. There are a lot of things you have to do. But if you want to be independent, if you want to be a self-employed person, that's the way the cookie crumbles. You have to deal with it.
So you certainly do. And you have to accept that that's what there is, and just no use sort of trying to fight that, because as you say, that is the way the cookie crumbles. I don't think I'm going to be able to look at a cookie or a biscuit. Careful with the pronunciation there. It's not biscuit, it's a biscuit. I don't think I'm going to be able to look at a cookie in the same way ever again without thinking of this idiom now.
Especially if it's crumbling and there's pieces everywhere in the packet. I'll tell you, talking about red tape and bureaucracy here in Spain, sometimes it drives me nuts. It drives me bananas, the paperwork and the hoops we have to jump through, the things we have to do to get things done. It drives me nuts.
Well, you're not alone, Craig. As you say, there is a lot of red tape to get through in both our lives, with this being freelance, being self-employed. The number pieces of paper I must have had to fill in and forms I've had to fill in over the last month or so has just driven me nuts. Some listeners may also have had to hand in a tax declaration. It's that time of year. Mm-hmm. I don't know, when you're filling in all these things, online perhaps, you're trying to do everything the best you can, the window freezes, you're missing a document, I don't know, you have to go back to square one, and it just drives me bananas.
Yeah, me too. So there we go. There's our next idiom. If something drives you nuts or drives you bananas, it makes you crazy. It really is frustrating. For example, he's driving me nuts with his political conspiracy theories. He's driving me crazy. And in a similar way, you can collocate bananas with the verb to go. If you go bananas, you get very excited or angry about something. For example, someone crashed into her car and she went bananas. But that's obviously in a very negative, angry way. If you got a nice birthday present, for example, you might go bananas because you didn't expect to get such a lovely present.
And you get super excited by it. I actually use that one about it drives me nuts. I'm just thinking about it. I've been using that idiom quite a bit in the last 6 weeks.
I wonder why.
Yes, okay.
I have as well. I've been frustrated with the internet and different services. So I tell you what drives me nuts. Recently, I've been trying to renew services on the internet, hosting services for websites and a dictation transcription service that I use. And it drives me nuts when you want to give a company money and they put things in the way so that it's really difficult for you to do it. So you like the service, you want to carry on using the service, you want to give them money, but there's something stopping you doing it. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, it would drive me nuts too, but obviously they don't want your money.
Speaking of things that are quite difficult to do, what happens if you bite off more than you can chew? Now, to chew in your mouth is when food goes in your mouth and you use your teeth to break it down and make it small enough to go into your stomach. Now, that happens to me sometimes with a nice big piece of chocolate cake. I bite off more than I can chew, but that's literally, how can we use it idiomatically?
Well, I mean, let's think of a context here to actually get to understand what the idiom means. It actually means to try to do something which is too difficult. So let's imagine you decide to open up a restaurant. You decide to become self-employed and you think, yes, it's going to be a great idea. However, let's imagine you open your first night of opening the restaurant. You've opened up your restaurant. And as soon as you open the restaurant, you realise that you have bitten off more than you can chew because you hadn't taken into account that you would need more staff and you've only contracted one bar person and you've got 35 clients coming in. You realise you've only contracted one cook. How is that cook going to manage in the kitchen? So you've tried, but the situation is too difficult. You haven't really planned the situation too well. You've bitten off more than you can chew, and you're having problems dealing with that situation.
And be careful with that verb to bite because it is irregular. So to bite is the infinitive, bit, B-I-T, is the past tense, and bitten, as Bea said, is the third form. The last time I bit off more than I could chew was when I started to create a new website for inglespodcast.com on WordPress. And I suddenly realized I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I looked at tutorials, I thought I could do it. I started doing it and I realized I did not have the technical knowledge to do this. So I had clearly taken on too much. There's that phrasal verb, to take on work is to accept it. I had taken on too much responsibility and I had bitten off more than I could chew.
That's a great example. Well, it's a personal example.
It's true as well.
Yeah. Who hasn't bitten off more than they can chew? That's the question.
Bea, I must say you're looking really nice today. I like the way you've done your hair. I like what you're wearing, and you're definitely doing a wonderful job on the podcast.
Oh, Craig, I hope you're not trying to butter me up, are you?
Butter you up? Are you hungry? Would you like a sandwich?
Okay. Well,
What do you mean, butter you up?
well, I can't help feeling, Craig, that you want something from me and you're trying to flatter me. You're trying to say nice things to me so that it'll be easier to convince me to do something.
Well, I was just being nice. I mean, I'd like you to come over and record more podcasts, but that wasn't the reason I was paying you so many compliments.
Well, I think you're trying to butter me up. Listeners can't see me, but I'm not wearing particularly nice clothes. I'm wearing a vest and a pair of shorts. My hair's all over the place. So why Craig is saying that my hair looks nice and my outfit, what I'm wearing, is nice, makes me suspect that he's trying to butter me up.
Yeah. So if you butter someone up, you praise them, you pay them compliments, maybe because you want something in return. And here's another example. If you want something from me, just ask. You don't have to butter me up with chocolates and flowers.
Or you might want to, because I love chocolates and I love flowers.
Okay, well, next time I'll try buttering you up with some chocolates and flowers.
Can't wait.
If you feel bad about something that cannot be changed, say something bad's happened and you know you can't change it, it's in the past, it's gone, it's finished. You could say, well, don't worry, cheer up, be happy. It's no use crying over spilt milk. What does that mean, to cry over spilt milk?
Well, if we look at it literally, think of your milk and the verb spill, which is for the liquid to come out of a recipient accidentally. So spill is derramar. Once the milk is spilt, it's spilt. There's nothing you can do. So what is the point of making your situation worse than it really is by saying, oh, this is terrible. Look what happened. Oh, people will be laughing at me. There's just no point in crying over spilt milk because what is done is done. What's the point, Craig?
Exactly. If you make a mistake or you fail a test or you say the wrong thing to someone, then don't worry, just continue, go forward, push forward. It's no point crying over spilt milk. It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's something I do tend to do on occasion, I have to say.
Well, it's not very positive because
No.
you can't, if something's gone, sometimes you can change things maybe by apologising perhaps, but usually you've got no control over it. So just let it go and carry on with life. Now, if you earn money for the family, you can say that you bring home the bacon. Now, I think this goes back years and years, centuries even, where for a reward to an employee, they might get some part of the pig to take home to feed their family. But if you use that idiom these days, it just basically means you're the one responsible for earning most of the money in the family. You bring home the bacon. For example, now that Harry has been made redundant, it's up to me or it's up to his wife to bring home the bacon, to bring home the salary, to earn the money.
Can you remember, on that, just talking about being made redundant, in last week's episode, there was a really nice, elegant way to say that you, as a consequence of being made redundant, you might find yourself on the dole. Can you remember a more elegant way of saying you're on the dole or unemployed?
Well, I'm waiting for listeners at home to think back. So if you did listen to last week's episode, and you definitely should have, if you didn't, why not? It was to be between jobs, to weigh up your options, to look forward to your next position. To be between jobs is a nice way of saying to be unemployed.
And having different jobs, what do you think about that, Craig? Because some people say that by doing many different things or changing what you do, it makes life interesting. And as they might say, variety is a spice of life.
I agree with that. I think we should try as many things as possible and have as many experiences as possible, because this isn't a rehearsal. Life is, we only get one chance at it. So if you're not happy in your job, or if you have been unfortunate enough to be between jobs at the moment, then that is an opportunity to try new things. It's not a negative thing to be crying over like spilt milk. So go out there, try something new, maybe do something you've always wanted to do. Now is the chance to do it, because variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, and if that means you need to butter someone up, go for it.
Now, before we go, we'd like to remind you that using our voice messaging system is a piece of cake. So we want you to go over to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast, and send us a voice message. Why not tell us what you think we should talk about in future podcasts? So go ahead and send us a message. You won't think that you've bitten off more than you can chew. Try studying and practicing English a different way by recording your voice. If you want to write it first, that's fine, but try not to write it and then just read it. Try to reduce the notes to bullet points so that you're practicing your fluency. Record your voice, listen back. If you're not happy, do it again. Try to improve your pronunciation. Keep recording it. Practice makes perfect. And variety is the spice of life. It's another way for you to practice your speaking. Send us a voice message or send us an email. You can reach me. I'm Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com. And Bea, if people want to work with you, what services do you offer and how can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me via your email address. That would be lovely. And I'm offering a wide range of English language related services. It could be a one-to-one class. It could be a group class, preferably online. You might want to prepare an interview in English, have a one-off class. You might want to prepare for an official exam. I'm open to what you might need me for. Anything related to your English.
So to reach Bea, send me an email, craig@inglespodcast.com, and I will send it over to her. Before we go, we'd like to remind you about the Mansion Inglés online store. You can find courses there to help you with your English. Go to store.mansioningles.net. And we'd also like to thank everyone who's helping us by supporting this podcast on Patreon. You too can join our Patreon program for $120 per month. That's the minimum. That includes the tax, and you get instant access to all recent transcriptions of the podcast. The link is in the show notes, patreon.com/inglespodcast. And we appreciate everyone who's supporting us, but we'll say a special hello to the latest people who have joined us over there on Patreon. That's Juan Miguel Marabel Gonzalez, Ana Robles, Marga Arisa, and Lucas Campas da Silva Moraes. Thank you very much to you and to everyone who's supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for listening this week. Until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you to Bea. And please tell your friends if you've enjoyed listening to the podcast this week.
Thank you so much for having me back on your podcast. Speedy recovery. Hope you get better soon, Reza. But I did have to say I am enjoying myself, so don't hurry back.
Yeah, we miss you, Reza, but we'll see you again very, very soon on the podcast. We'll be listening to you, I'm sure, soon. So, until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.